and welcome back to my videos. So, I got a new microphone. How does it sound? I hope it's alright. Anyway, so recently I took a trip out to Colorado to visit some of my family out there, and while we were out there we did some thrift shopping, and I happened upon this little gem in one of the, I think it was called an ARC. I can't remember, but it was one of the thrift stores out there, and I thought it was just super cool, so I had to grab it to put all of my little potion bottles and stuff on, because it's perfect. So let's dive in. As with any thrift project, your first thing is going to be wanting to clean it. Now, this thing wasn't too dirty, but the sticker on the top with the price tag did rip up the varnish, so it kind of changed my idea for it, but I think it ends up working out really well in the end. So I wiped it down, I sanded it, and then I was like, why don't we make some cute little teeny tiny vines to hang down on it? But then I realized a couple of things. First thing, I'm very new to crochet, and trying to crochet a bunch of really teeny tiny vines is really freaking hard. So I decided to use this other yarn that I had. It was easier, I guess, but the yarn itself was kind of cheap. So when I was actually crocheting it, it kept sticking to the hook a lot, so it was kind of annoying to work with. But in the end, I ended up making a bunch of little vines, and I think they ended up super cute. As you can see, I'm just kind of testing out where I want to put all of the vines and everything. Now, I also wanted to make some cute little mushrooms that went along with it. My plan at this point is to cover the top just completely with moss, so that that part where the varnish is ripped up, I don't have to try to revarnish. But I wasn't sure how I wanted to make the mushroom, so I thought I would try to figure out a couple of different approaches to it. So this is my first attempt. I thought I could just make them out of paper and they would look well enough. So here's the process for that. I decided to try to make 3 different kinds of mushrooms. Some that look more like almanitas, some that look like morels, and a couple that looked more similar to like a chanterelle mushroom. So my idea was to cut these out, let them dry after the texture and everything had been finished, and then cut them into little squares, and then from the squares kind of TP them in on themselves, so cut a little slice and then roll them up. So I made a bunch of them, and I was pretty happy with them. This is the stem paper I decided to make. My idea was to cut it in half, so I'd have like double the stems. So that's what I did, and then I was just gonna roll them into little tubes, and this is when I decided I hated it. Sure, it's a simple option, but ultimately it's not gonna be as good. So we're just gonna move on, and we're gonna try something else for a little bit. Just to cover up the weird transition from the parts of the shelf that I varnished and the parts I didn't varnish, I decided to use some of this twine that my sister had bought actually for my little sister's baby shower. But we ended up not being able to hang anything on the walls on the venue we rented, so we just had like a bunch of random stuff left over, and it was just laying around the house. Nobody was using it, so here it is. I'm going to use it here, and I'm going to wrap the bottom lip and then the top lip with it as well, just to cover up those transitions from, like I said, from where I sanded to where I didn't sand. I'm also hot gluing it down in strategic points so it doesn't fall off or get too loose. At this point, I also thought that these little posts needed just a little zhuzhing up, I guess. So I decided to take some of that same twine I wrapped around the top, and I will later wrap around the bottom, and also wrap it around the top of the little posts. Let me tell you, this thing was tricky to record because it's like just big enough that it's awkward for the setup I had at the time, because I didn't have a tripod yet. I just got one. So that's made it a lot easier, but a lot of these shots are me with my camera on a little, what's it called, boom arm connected to not like a tripod or anything, but a set of fireplace tools. So it was connected to one of those stands. But hey, it worked. It was kind of awkward, but it worked. Now I'm just going to trim these down really quick so that I don't have any extra fluffy things to try to deal with. And we're going to lay down some hot glue and then cover it with the moss. Now I discovered while I was doing this, the moss fiber, it's natural moss. I think it's called stagnum moss. But when you glue it down in clumps, but each little section is, well, it's just that, it's each little section. So a lot of it is just held together with friction and just the moss naturally wanting to clump together. I did glue a lot of it down, but if you brushed it hard enough, all that would be left are the little glue stripes and whatever happened to stick to the glue, which was kind of frustrating because it did make gluing it down a little bit harder. And I suppose I could have used like Mod Podge and water and alcohol to glue it down, and that might have worked better and been more secure, but I was worrying that that might mess with how fluffy it is. Now the cool thing about using this moss is it's really brown now, but if you just water it, it does smell kind of weird, but it will get more green because it's just, like I said, it's a natural moss, so it'll do it up. I also decided to use some of these little flowers. I actually used them to make a wreath, or not a wreath, like a daisy chain basically, that's in my living room as decoration on my wall. So I just thought it'd be a cute way to kind of tie everything together. You can see there, I sprayed it with some water to try to bring it back to life a little bit. Now I'm going to let all that set for a little bit, and I'm going to start working on my next couple attempts at the mushrooms. So recently I've been eating a lot of baby bottle pops, and so naturally I have a bunch of extra pieces from the candy left over, and I thought maybe if I had covered one of the tops of it where the sucker is connected to the actual little bottle, if I covered that in saran wrap and then put hot glue over top of it, it could make like a cute little dome shape, and it actually ended up working pretty good. But I also wanted to try the paper method again, but my problem with the first attempt is it was too thin and it just didn't have enough like meat to it, I guess. I guess that's what too thin means. Anyway, so I'm going to try to make that same little like teepee shape, but then I'm going to cover it with tape just to kind of flesh it out a little bit and maybe make it a little bit better, because this would be a little bit easier and a little bit better on materials than the hot glue method would be. So I just went up and did a little mock-up of each one, and here's how they turned out. I'm not mad at that one, it's not bad, but let's see how the baby bottle pop one looked. Now that is what I'm talking about. Oh, focus. There we go. I feel like that's a much more natural and a much cuter shape. So between the two, even though I do think the tape one would be easier, I do think I'm going to go with the other method. Just because I feel like quality's there. And that's really what I want. I spent a really long time showing you the differences. Anyway, we're going to make a whole bunch of those. Like I said, I want to make a couple different sizes and a couple different kinds of mushrooms. And I found if I wrapped it really tight like this and put a thin layer of hot glue it would give you a shape similar to that first one where it's very high at the top and it dips down really quick towards the base of it. And if you put more hot glue on it and you let it dry in between, it gives you a much thicker, more rounded mushroom top. So I wanted to use that to do, again, like a amanita shape with the thicker tops, and then the thinner ones to do a different kind of mushroom. I also ended up using some of my paintbrushes and there's the difference. You can see the difference pretty nice. Anyway, I ended up using some of my paintbrushes doing a similar thing where I wrapped it in saran wrap and then I covered it in hot glue to make some really thin, tall mushrooms. You can see I'm doing that here. And this is how they all turned out. I'm really happy with it. I made a couple of different sizes just so that they're not all samey. But yeah, I'm really happy with how they turned out. Now we're gonna move on from those and we're going to make a little log, because I thought it would be really cute to have like a little log in the middle and then the mushrooms and flowers around it. So I did do this twice because I thought I could make it like just straight out of hot glue, just like I did with the mushrooms. But you can see here in a second, I get about 2 stripes in when I realize this is gonna be pretty flimsy. And not that it's like structural, but I want it to just be able to hold up its own weight and not dip down weird in the middle. And I was worried that if I just made it out of hot glue, it would be easier, but not as good. So we're gonna try that again. So I thought if I wrapped it with paper first and then did tape over top of the paper, and then on top of the tape do the hot glue, because then I can use the hot glue to texture it. But the tape and the paper will provide the structure that I wanted, and it will help the like little log section keep its shape better. So that's what I ended up going with. I feel like there's a lot of balancing you have to do with these things, where it's finding a balance between what's easy and what's actually just best and what the project calls for. So I did a really quick base coat on the log, and I'm going to set that aside to dry, but I'm going to really quick work on making the mushroom stems. I wanted to use these skewers so that I could get a couple of different sizes of mushroom stem. I wanted to use the point of a bunch of them to make the little brown mushrooms, which these ones will be. Very thin and kind of spindly, but with like a thicker base, so I used the hot glue. And then I cut that off. And then from there, I'm going to use the rest of the skewer to make the amanita stems. And then I'm going to use a slightly different method for the little more tube-shaped mushrooms, where I take a little bit of string and I cover those in hot glue to texture it and to make it hold its shape. And then I put those together. So yeah, that's how that ended up looking. I'm pretty happy with them. I think they're super cute. They do need to be cleaned up a little bit and painted, but once that's done, I'm really happy with them, honestly. Now all that's really left to do is paint everything, let that dry, and then do the final assembly. So I'm gonna let you guys watch that and I'll catch you at the end. with that, it's all finished. I've hung it up on the wall in my little altar space just so that you can get an idea of what it looks like. And with that, everything is finished. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll catch you in the next video.